I'd like to welcome Susan Patricelli-Regan back to the Greater Hartford Academy, their half day program, to share with us the memory and the honor of her mother's work, Sylvia Davis. This is to present information to students for the Sylvia Davis Fine Arts Scholarship for the 2024 season. Welcome, Susan.
Okay. Thank you, Natasha. Appreciate it. Natasha's been excellent. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you about 15, 20 minutes, an overview of my mother's career, the purpose behind her work, which was very comprehensive. It's covered a lot of different subject matters, historical things. And my mother was exceptionally talented. She graduated from the Sydney Fine Arts program, and she was noted as being one of the most talented students at age 15 to graduate from the Royal Academy of Fine Arts. During her career, she had the opportunity, at about age 20, her father, who was a gold miner, and he said to her, World War II is coming to this area of the world. And it would be a very good thing for you to accompany me to the Solomon Islands, which is houses and homes the most primitive people in the world. Now, these people had a lot of folklore involved. They basically had never seen a white woman before, and they had seen very few white men, who basically were in the Solomon Islands to do gold panning. And she said, okay, fine. So they had to take a trip, along with all of her art materials, to the Solomon Islands. And they were there about 18 months before World War II. Now, when they landed, they first thought that she was a witch because she had blonde hair, she was a white woman, and as I said, white women were not something that they were used to. So when she first attempted to ask them to sit and pose so that she could do some portraits, they were very afraid. And the reason they were afraid was they thought that if she captured their persona, their profiles, their faces on canvas, she would then own their lives and perhaps do harm to them. So eventually, now there was a language that was spoken between white people and the natives. It was called Pidgin English. So it was a bit of broken thing, but that between hand signals and various things. The chief of the tribe was persuaded to tell his people that they could be, that no harm would come to them. So he sat for his picture, and then various other ones did, and there were various scenes. There were scenes in the village, there were scenes with mothers with their babies, there was something called the bride price that actually was, these were like shells, beaded shells, that they used to exchange in order to buy a wife from another family. And one of the interesting stories was she wanted to do one of the children. I think they were actually probably about age 8 or 10 years old. And the story is she first did the picture of this child, and my mother said to the mother, or my mother said to the mother of this child, I would prefer to have a smiling picture. So she said, I know what to do to change the thought process here. So she got a toad, and they had huge toads. Now, mind you, this is all during being in a jungle that literally they would cut down the vines, cut down the bushes, etc., and it would grow back within a week, all of it. Also, mosquitoes, malaria. Now, the natives got malaria on a regular basis, and when they got a high fever, they would go into the river, which is where they were catching the malaria. As it turned out, my mother got a case of it, and she was never able to give blood anymore because you can't get it out of your system. But in any case, the mother of the child took a string, tied it to a big toad, which now made this child smile. So we have, this is kind of a little short story between those two. Now this is obviously a photograph of my mother. My mother had quite a big exhibition when she came back to Sydney, Australia. She had an exhibition, and I believe that's where that picture was taken. Now, my mother did several self-portraits, but I want you to see that this is one of the self-portraits that she did. And would any of you feel comfortable doing a self-portrait of yourself? And if you did one, what would you be doing? Trying to show your emotions or trying to do a duplicate of what you see in the mirror? So there you are. What do you think? And you can comment. We're not going to have anybody's picture put up, so no one. Any comments? What do you think? Pretty accurate? Okay. So with regard to this scholarship, I think we started out, and Natasha can correct me, but I think we started out with $500. Okay. And then I think we moved on from there to $600. This year, it's $1,000. Now, what I see, or what I have interpreted from a conversation with Natasha, is that what would inspire you the most about the money? Sure, great to have the money. We assume you would use it toward your career, your education, the process of becoming an artist. Now, some of you are going to perhaps do that as an avocation, which means you would not be doing it on a professional basis, but you would be doing it for your own pleasure or for your friends, whatever. Or it could be a career. You could be an illustrator for magazines, books, or to simply set up your own shop and sell your paintings. This scholarship was called a Fine Arts Scholarship. And what I would like to know is, give me a hand raise. I'm going to give the three different things. Who is doing it here for simply an avocation, just something you like to do? Raise your hand. How many of you, that's what you think you want to do? Okay, so I see a couple, okay, 5 or 6 people, all right. Who is hoping to do it on a professional basis, hired by someone to illustrate books or magazines or perhaps posters for movies or whatever? Oh, okay. So now, okay, very good. Okay, that's great. That's a good percentage of you. It's about a third at least. And that tells me you're a capitalist, which is a good thing. Because if we didn't have if we did not have that, this country and most countries would not be able to survive. Because we need an economy. We need people who are willing to buy, willing to sell. And then once you have money in your pocket, you can now use it to go buy a car or whatever it is to pay your bills. Now, who's hoping to open their own shop? Do pictures or pottery or whatever creative arts? Okay, all right. So that's kind of about the same, which is fine too, because that's your career. Let me try and inspire you to think beyond how you're creating now. And when I say that, some of you are doing it on canvas, some of you are doing it perhaps, because inclusive in this is something that's really right, something that's one of my favorite things, and that's sculpture. How many of you do sculpture too? Okay, great. The reason I like sculpture is because that piece has to be accurate or have a message that reaches. They say that great art is understood by a majority of people. How many people here, how many students here are familiar with an artist, Salvador Dali? Ah, okay, that's good. So you know history. What was he famous for? Just speak up and say, what was he noted for? Okay, if you were to look at one of his pictures, what do you see? How does he normally paint? He has things dripping from things, right? Clocks coming off a shelf, right? So that made him very unique in his own way. Then there was another one, and I have to say, I honestly can't remember. I think it was one of the Flemish painters. And he was known for doing very gaunt portraits of people and pictures of people. And the reason he did it was because he had a problem with his eyesight. And that's how he saw people. Even though they were not as thin as he painted them, that's how he saw. Here's another question for you. If you had a favorite beach that you would say when you were 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or 16 years old, maybe it was your cousin's beach house, whatever, and you have a favorite part of the beach you'd like to walk down, and it was where you met your first amour, whether it be a girl or a guy or two guys or two girls, whatever, that was a scene that you painted. Maybe from photograph and maybe from life. That person gave you a seashell, and you kept it as a treasure from that time. If you were to take that picture that you painted and you wanted to give it a second dimension, what would you do with that seashell? Anybody? Yes. I'm sorry? You glue it to the canvas, like? Attach it to the canvas? Yes, that's correct. That's the way I want you to think about your artwork going forward. Try to move out of what you normally do. Try to express something that either you feel emotionally, but try to make sure that people will be able to interpret that message. So try to think out of the box. Try to think beyond what you normally produce. Or perhaps, you do painting on canvas or painting on board, painting board, and then try some sculpture, because that is demanding. That is very demanding sculpture of your favorite subject, or perhaps a sculpture of someone in your family. So my mother's purpose, and she has the Solomon Island, we have the Solomon Island collection of all the natives. We also have, my father was very involved in golf. He was a member of the Connecticut PGA, that's Professional Golfers Association. And they went on tour one year, and my mother did most of the famous golf courses. She did many of the famous players at that time. So that was a segment in history. Another one was the America's Cup. 12-meter boats. 12-meter boats. And one year, they actually attended twice. And one year, there was a concern by the America's Cup, I guess, judges, referees, whatever, whoever ran it, because for the first time in history, in 125 years of the America's Cup, the USA did not win, and Australia did. I think it was Australia 2 was the boat. And they had to pull the boat up out of the water to look at the keel to see if it actually followed regulations. And it did. So they won. So my mother did, I think it was John Bertrand, I think was the owner of the boat. And that was a very unique thing in history as well. So we have the collection, that collection. Now my mother, when she first came to America, and the reason she was here was when she had an exhibition in Sydney, Australia, after she came back from the Solomon Islands, was opened by Lady Gowrie, who would have been like a Jackie Kennedy type person. Would have been the wife of the president of Sydney, of Australia. And that lady knew Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the wife of President Roosevelt. And she when Eleanor found out about my mother and her paintings and the fact she was coming to the United States, she actually contacted G. Fox and Company, and in Hartford. It used to be a famous store here. And Mrs. Auerbach, who owned the store, ran the store, said that she would have an exhibition have the exhibition at Sentinel Hill Hall, in which case Eleanor attended, which was a great thing, opened it, and if you go to my mother's website, you will be able to hear her speak. Very cultured voice, very interesting woman, and many of the things she discussed back then, which 1951, would match today's what's going on in our world today. So there is also, because of Mrs. Roosevelt, she did a life-size portrait of her, which hangs in our home. And she also did a lot of Valkill paintings, which was owned by the Roosevelts. And so, as I said, my mother's purpose was not only because she was so talented, but was for historical purposes, an accurate visual study of many things that happened. So I encourage you, if you are interested in applying formally for this scholarship, I do want you to reach beyond what you're doing now. Take that opportunity for that money to be invested in materials, to try something, perhaps pursue what you're interested in now, but something else. Now, any questions? We have about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. Again, no visuals of anybody's face. We'll just have Natasha can go around with the mic and get your questions. What do we have? 3 different classes here? Did I hear that correctly?
So there's a combination of juniors and seniors. There is a painting 1 class here. There's also a drawing 2 class here.
Okay. All right. I also encourage you to try different materials too. You know, if you're just doing oil or perhaps you're doing acrylics, try charcoal. Watercolors, of course, the most difficult to do because it dries immediately, and once you've done it, it's rather hard to correct it. I personally worked in acrylics myself. And I will just say, for the record, my mother never gave me a drawing thing. She told me things. She told me about linseed oil and so forth, and I said, oh, it's too complicated for me. I just want to do acrylics. But she never really gave me. I did it basically because I found a lot of pleasure in doing my artwork. But come on, you must have some questions. Nobody? No questions?
Do you all know when the scholarship information is due? Okay, that might be a good question to ask. Or what the requirements are?
Yeah, okay, yes. What is this? When is the scholarship given out? It's at your academy or your awards in the spring. Correct. Is it May?
It is in June.
In June.
It is in June.
Okay. Yes.
Is there anything specific that you would want to see for the scholarship?
Anything we want to see? What?
Like anything specific that you would want to see for the scholarship?
Anything? Oh, well, there are certain requirements. I think it's 6 pieces. We ask for you to submit 6 pieces. You can do that via email. Well, Natasha has all the things you have to do. Submit them online. I ask for you to give me a paragraph or so that kind of says what that subject matter was about for each of the 6 pieces. It's up to 6 pieces, but I wouldn't want to see any less than 4. Obviously, if you deal in different materials, you know, one could be a piece of sculpture and one could be a painting, whatever. One thing I do not agree with, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not into the digital things, you know. You know the pictures you see of people, they're standing in observing 2 pictures, and we've got some squiggly lines, you know, and some circles and things, and then we've got some other thing that's, you know, all black or something, okay? That to me is not artwork. It doesn't express anything. I think it's just a lot of tomfoolery by the artists. That's a lot of nonsense. It's not, one should actually know how to draw, how to place your subject matter on canvas or board or whatever you're drawing. There are basic things in art that you need to follow, but all that kind of stuff is rubbish. That's in my book. It's rubbish. It's just silly things, and then people try and make some story out of it. Oh yes, those are sea waves. Oh. Who would get that message? Sea waves with a bunch of black lines. Okay, so that's one thing I'm against. All right, questions?
I have a follow-up question to
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So for digital art, I think about our students who are digital artists and aspiring to create in that format. They take figure drawing, they take life drawing, they implement those skills into their digital art making. So would that be maybe seen
As
in a
long as
different
there's
light?
a message.
Okay.
Remember I said,
Okay.
they say that one of the greatest judgments of true art is that a majority of the people in the room know what it is, or about, or what the message is, or what you're trying to say. Are you familiar with the sculptor Rodin's The Kiss? You familiar with it? Do you know about it? It's a man and a woman embracing. He's leaning over her. Maybe he's trying to get to the right spot to convince her this is a good time to make love or whatever. But the point being is you see the passion in the figures. You see the woman giving, the man taking. You know what's going on here, right? That's what I mean that the message resonates. And you could be a person from France, you could be a person from Spain, you could be a person from Australia, you could be a person from Africa. I think you know what's going on between that man and woman. That's what I'm saying. There's got to be a message somewhere that the majority of people would get the idea. Now, that's where that paragraph comes in where you explain to me what each of these things are supposed to represent. And then I do want to speak, we will get down to 3 finalists, and we'll set up a time mutually convenient to you and myself, and speak with you for 5 minutes on the phone and just ask you a few questions, general questions, so that I get to know you just a little bit better. And then we'll make the judgment call from there.
There's one more question.
Okay? And if you can speak up, because, I'll just come down here. Okay.
So you like art that can tell a message or story just by looking at it?
Observing.
Okay.
Observing. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't some explanation that needs to be given, which, what I gave you the illustration of, your favorite beach, and then a seashell that's been attached to that. Somebody might say, what's that about? What's the story behind that? And then your story would be, well, my uncle had this beach house, and I loved to be down there, and I relaxed and so forth, and the seashell was given to me by Bobby, my sweetheart. And I put my favorite treasure on a picture on my favorite beach. It might need some explanation. Yeah.
Very good.
Don't be shy here, guys. Ask questions. Yes.
Are you symbolism? Maybe how certain objects have been like flower language? Is that involved?
Okay, explain to me what flower language would be.
Certain flowers have different meanings.
Okay, yeah.
Like different color roses have meanings, like yellow is friendship.
Oh, no, you're right. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Now, some people are not familiar with that. Flowers happen to be one of my favorite things in the whole world. They always make me happy. And they could be a plant or whatever. But to me, it represents life. Life continuing. And I am an absolute dictated to little creatures. I love little creatures. I mean, snakes, little teeny tiny mice, little lizards, things really good. We have a lot of animals. We have a farm. We have horses. We have dogs. We've bred many puppies. We have ducks. We've had turkeys. We have chickens. Yeah, I'm a creature thing. Every time I say to my husband, I've got an idea, he goes, oh boy, here we go. Susan wants to get something else. Okay, so yes to your question. Yes. Any other questions?
Josie.
Yes.
just like to make art for fun and not necessarily, like, if you were to ask me if I had a meaning behind my art, it would probably be no, other than the fact that I just like making it.
I totally understand, because that's what I do. I mean, if I sell a picture, fine, but I'm not, in the business of selling pictures personally myself. So that's fine if it makes you happy. I mean, that's basically what I did. I did it pretty much because I really enjoyed it. I also went after the Gold Key Awards because I liked the prestige of it, that I was talented enough to beat out a bunch of other people. I've always been very competitive. So this is just part of my personality. But yeah, no. So sure, if it makes you happy, that's where the avocation comes in. You do it for your own relaxation. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
What is the deadline for the application?
What is that, Natasha? Probably has to be sometime in May.
At least May, I would say somewhere in the first week of May. I'd have to look at the calendar, but that would be the best time because it's about a month or so before commencement.
Right. And as far as the money goes, whoever ends up winning, I would either make sure the check got to Natasha and she handed it over, or we might mail it or whatever. And we trust you that you're going to use it toward something to do with art, not buy a new pair of sneakers or something. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Are you excited? I mean, I'm trying to get you inspired here. Are you inspired at all? Okay. Just think about what my mother did. She did all those paintings under the circumstances in a jungle, that snakes, spiders, etc. Yeah, got another question?
Would someone be able to apply for a scholarship if they're currently like undecided on what they're going to major in?
I didn't quite understand the question.
Like,
If you haven't decided what direction you're going to go?
yeah, in like college, because you like pick a major and a minor.
Right.
Because I'm currently undecided on what I'm going to do. Would
Right.
I still be able to apply for the scholarship?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Good question.
No, it's open to anybody. I want you to be inspired by what my mother did and her purpose behind it, and then figure out what your purpose is. If it's to win the money so that you can buy more art materials are expensive, right? Particularly in today's inflationary world. Everything's very expensive. Don't you hear your parents talking about it all the time? All the time. I just came back from the grocery store. It cost me $50 more than it usually does, right? You hear that all the time? Oh, I know. I have a question for you guys. When it comes to the fact that you're applying for the scholarship, make sure that there is a sincere desire to fulfill. Were you inspired by anyone specifically in your family? Was your mother an artist? Was it your father who encouraged you to get involved in it because you were talented? Yeah, what's the...
It was my dad.
Okay.
He grew up in a sort of household that didn't not necessarily shunned him becoming an artist, but
The son of an artist.
yeah, they didn't want him to become an artist,
Yeah.
but I can tell that he really wants me to become one.
Yes. He wants you to follow your heart. Yeah, there are all kinds of reasons why people do it. And personally, I think one of the greatest ones to do it is to make yourself happy. I was always happy. I had this thing called a T-square table my father had, and it was set up in the living room of our house in West Hartford, and I used to watch TV and do my pictures. And I did it just because I really liked doing it. And then, like I said, I went into the competition because I wanted the prestige of it. I wanted to be able to say, I won this. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. I think that's probably it for today. If you have any further questions, feed them through Natasha, and I'll be sure to get back to you right away.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Okay.
Always
You know, she's a wonderful lady. Let's give her a hand clap. Come on.
Some of y'all think that, and that's all right.
Okay. All right. So thank you for coming today. I hope you all apply. And the way it will happen is there will be some screening down by your teachers, by Natasha, whatever, internally, and then we will probably end up with about 6 finalists, and then I'll narrow that down to 3, and then after I talk to you on the phone, maybe 6 different people, and I'll narrow it down to 3, and then I'll pick one. Okay, thank you for coming. I hope you have a great rest of the day.